This is happening right now. Something that the Jews have not seen in over 2,000 years. So in 48, Israel was declared as a nation. Okay? But they still did not control Jerusalem. In the 6-Day War in 67, guess what? They have Jerusalem. So we see these timelines, these prophetic timelines coming into fruition, coming into motion, coming into manifestation. So, thank you, honey. So the prophetic timeline is moving. So in 48, they were declared a nation. 67, they took Jerusalem. The problem is, on the Temple Mount, it's the Dome of Omar, the Dome of the Rock. I want to say, let's see, Trump first was elected in, 16 to 20. I'm trying to think. You guys can just look it up. Because remember, he did something that no one, that even the whole world was shaken by. He had our embassy moved to Jerusalem. The U.S. embassy, he had it moved to Jerusalem. He just, I don't know if he did it through an executive order, however, he just, hey, we're going to move it to Jerusalem. And everybody was in uproar about it, but he did it. He did it. So let me read to you some verses of scriptures in Numbers 19, and then for the time that I have remained, I want to just deal with what's happening right now. Not in the future, but what's happening right now that is on the trajectory of this eschatological timeline. Numbers 19, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and said unto him, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring, watch this now, thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And ye shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth, watch the language here, without the camp. Let me just throw this parenthetical pause in here. That's why Jesus had to be crucified outside of the camp. Bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his fingers and sprinkle of her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. So let me do this. Let me jump ahead, jump in the middle, then move backwards. Jumping ahead, this is going to happen on Mount Olive, where this red heifer would be slaughtered and burned. I'll pick up that in a moment. That's going to happen on Mount Olive. Now, notice this now, that he would take with his, basically his little finger, and sprinkle her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. These are not just words on paper, brothers and sisters. There's specific reason for this. When the high priest on the day of Yom Kippur, Yom mean day, Kippur mean atonement. The high priest on the day of Yom Kippur, once a year, would go behind the veil in the holies of holies, which is in the temple, the first and the second temple. The second temple did not have the Ark of the Covenant, but in the first temple that had the Ark of the Covenant, he would go back. He had to go backwards because they couldn't look upon the Ark. he would back in to the holies of holies that was filled with the smoke of incense from the altar. The rising of the smoke symbolically represents our worship. He would go backwards. I don't want to go through all this. I told you this. I'm not sure. I know it couldn't have been no more than a week or two ago, how the priest would take the bullock and the goat and the sheep and all that stuff. So he would dip his finger in the basin of blood, and over his right shoulder he would sprinkle, because they knew basically how many backward steps to take to know exactly where the ark was at. So he would sprinkle in the direction of the ark over his right shoulder on the mercy seat 7 times. That number 7 is a very significant number. I know we say, well, it's God's perfect number, God's number of perfection. No. The reason that he threw the blood, now watch this now, sprinkled toward the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times, and the high priest would sprinkle over his right toward the mercy seat 7 times. The significance of that number 7 is the number of times that Jesus bled. He bled in the Garden of Gethsemane. There's a medical term there where his pores burst open and his sweat drops of blood. That was the first time. He bled when the Roman soldiers smote him in the mouth. When he was talking to Pontius Pilate, the Roman soldier gave him a backhand across his lip and said, I dare you to talk to the governor that way. So he busted his lip. He bled when he was beaten on the whipping post. He bled when they put the crown of thorns on his head. He bled when they nailed his hands. He bled when they nailed his feet. And then finally, my brothers and my sisters, he bled when they pierced him in the side. So the sprinkling of the blood 7 times was symbolic and prophetic, or prophetically symbolic of that which was going to take place in the life of their Messiah, Yeshua. The 7 times that he would bleed. I'm still here in the book of Numbers. Verse 6, Numbers 19:6. And the priest shall take cedar wood. Now, all of this has significant meaning. I don't have time to break every intricate detail down. Cedar wood with hyssop and scarlet and cast into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the evening. I'm going to break all this down. It may take a minute because I want you guys to really get this. And he that burneth her shall wash his clothes in water, bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. Verse 9, and the man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and lay them up without the camp. Remember, everything is taking place without the camp. And lay them without camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for the water of separation. And that's a whole different teaching about this, the water of separation. Watch this now. Here's the key. It is a purification for sin. Now, let me stop because I only got one. But let me finish this last verse. And he that gathereth the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. And it shall be unto the children of Israel and unto the stranger that sojourn among them for a statute forever. Forever. Now, let me break this down. This is what modern-day Orthodox Jews call a supreme paradox. a supreme paradox. What I just read to you was the layout that God gave Moses in order for the priests to carry out their priestly duties, to carry out their ceremonial duties in the temple. They had to be purified. But in order for them to be purified, they had to be purified through the sacrifice of the red heifer. The red heifer had to be put on the altar, burned outside of the camp. Everything, the head, the feet, their intestines, everything was burned to ashes. The ashes was then taken and mixed. While the heifer was being burned, they threw cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet upon it, and then it had to be taken and mixed with pure spring water. Why is all this important? Because, again, in order for the priest to be purified, this is how they was purified. Now, what the Orthodox Jews call their supreme, what they call their supreme orthodoxy, was the fact that the person, not orthodox, but the supreme paradox, that the person who was responsible, the priest who was responsible for the burning of the red heifer, for doing all of these things. Watch this now. While the priest was doing all of this, because now you killed something dead and you had to touch a dead thing, you were deemed unclean. So I hope I can make sense of this. So it was through a priest that was now unclean that he's preparing the ritual for purification. That's why they called it a supreme paradox. But what they did not see is that this supreme paradox was again, a eschatological timeline or a parenthetical of Jesus. We see the parenthetical of Jesus from this supreme paradox of the priest burning this red heifer who is now unclean. Before I break this down, let me just throw this little caveat in here. You heard me say this before, that the reason that the woman with the issue of blood had to touch the hem of Jesus to leap was for him to be ceremoniously unclean. He's a rabbi, right? So I'm going to do 2 or 3 things. I will get back to the fullness of it. So this is the whole concept of the parable about the Good Samaritan. So when the rabbi came and saw the man over in the ditch, he went on the other side of the road. Why? He was on his way to temple service. He could not touch something that was unclean, or especially that which was dead, because he would have to go through this 7-day purification. So he went on the other side. Same thing with the priest. Okay? Now, let's get back to Jesus being touched by the woman with the issue of blood. The moment that she touched the hem of his garment, the tassels of his tallit, Jesus is now ceremoniously unclean. Why is that little footnote important? Because in order for him to go with Jairus and go into his dead daughter's room, he had to be unclean. As a rabbi, he was not allowed to go in there and touch something dead. So you see this throughout the narrative of text, throughout the New Testament narrative, So let's look at this supreme paradox of the priest. The priest that's making the preparation for the purification of the priest to do temple worship was deemed unclean while he is preparing this stuff for them to be purified. So through his uncleanness, they became clean. Watch the flip. The flip is 2 Corinthians 5:21. He that knew no sin, watch this now, was made sin, thus he was deemed unclean. He knew no sin. It wasn't that the priest committed sin, but because of his ceremonial requirement, he was deemed unclean. He that knew no sin was made sin for us. Now watch the flip of the text. That through his ceremonious uncleanness, we might be made the righteousness of God in him. Woo! Okay, let me finish this up. All right. In verse 10, and he that gathered the ashes of the heifer his clothes and be unclean until the evening, and it shall be unto the children of Israel, unto the stranger that sojourn among them, for a statute forever. So for over 2,000 years, brothers and sisters, since the building of Solomon's temple in 957, there only been 9 red heifers that met this biblical requirement. Only been 9. And all of them was used for this ceremony. I don't want to call it a ritual. Let's call it for this biblical requirement, or this Torah requirement, let's put it that way, for this Torah requirement for the priest to be made clean. So for over 2,000 years, the Jews have been patiently waiting for the opportunity to build a third temple. Every year, and I've been to quite a few Passover Seders, at the end of a Passover Seder, they will always say, this time next year in Jerusalem. They've been saying that for over 2,000 years. Why? Because to this day, whether they're Orthodox Jews or Messianic Jews, they're still awaiting the rebuilding of the third temple.